Welcome to Learn English Perfectly, the podcast. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe the channel. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast series, Think in English, Stop Translating from Your Language. I'm your host, Emma, and over the next 10 episodes, we're diving into one of the most powerful changes you can make in your English learning journey. Today's topic is one that unlocks fluency, confidence, and speed. Thinking directly in English. With me is Alex, a language coach who's helped hundreds of learners break out of the mental translation trap. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, Emma. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. This topic is so important because it's something almost every English learner struggles with at some point.
Yes, and it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or someone who studied English for years, this habit of translating from your native language into English is surprisingly common. But the truth is, it's also one of the biggest things holding people back.
You nailed it. It's like trying to swim while holding on to a safety rope. You feel safer, but you're not moving freely. And in language learning, freedom is key. You need to let go of the rope.
That's a perfect metaphor. And for today's episode, we're going to explore why this happens, how it affects fluency, and what learners can do to begin thinking in English, starting today.
Sounds good. I'll also share a few stories from students who broke out of the translation habit and saw their English improve dramatically in just a few weeks.
Let's start at the beginning. Why do so many people translate in their heads when speaking English?
Well, it's a natural instinct. Language is deeply connected to thought. And when we learn a second language, we usually learn it through our first language. So we start by mapping English words to words we already know. That's the first step, but most people stay stuck there.
So you're saying it's a process problem, like it's useful at first, but dangerous if it becomes permanent.
Exactly. At the beginner level, you need translation as a bridge. But at some point, if you want to speak smoothly, you have to burn that bridge and stop crossing back and forth between languages.
Let's make this real for our listeners. Say I'm a Spanish speaker and I want to say, I'm hungry. But in my head, I think first, tengo hambre, then try to convert it into English. That creates a pause, right?
Yes, and not just a pause. It creates confusion. In Spanish, you have hunger. In English, you are hungry. The sentence structure and the concept don't match perfectly. So even a simple sentence becomes complicated when you translate it literally.
That's true for so many expressions. Like, make a decision in English is tomado una decisión in Spanish. Literally, take a decision. If you translate word for word, it sounds strange in English.
Exactly. And that's where people get stuck. They try to apply the rules of their own language to English, and it doesn't work. That's why translation is not just slow, it's inaccurate. It leads to mistakes and unnatural phrasing.
So, what happens in the brain when someone is translating versus when they're thinking directly in English?
Great question. When you translate, your brain is doing double the work. First, it has to access the word in your native language. Then it has to find the English equivalent. Then it has to check the grammar. That's 3 steps for every idea.
Wow, that sounds exhausting.
It is, and it shows. That's why so many learners feel tired after a conversation in English. Not because English is hard, but because they're doing triple the processing. When you think directly in English, you eliminate those steps. Your brain goes from thought to word in one move.
That's powerful. So instead of thinking, how do I say this in English, you're just thinking in English to begin with.
Exactly. That's fluency. Fluency isn't about knowing every word. It's about not needing to translate the ones you already know.
Let's bring in an example. Imagine 2 learners. One is Maria. She knows a lot of vocabulary, but always translates in her head. The other is John. He knows less vocabulary, but he thinks in English as much as he can. Who speaks better?
I've met both types, and John almost always sounds more fluent. Maria might know more words, but her speech is slow and hesitant. John might make more mistakes, but he sounds more natural and confident. And confidence matters.
So vocabulary isn't the whole picture.
Not at all. If vocabulary is a toolbox, then thinking in English is knowing how to use the tools. What good is knowing the word nevertheless if you take 10 seconds to remember it and then use it in the wrong place?
That's such a great way to think about it. Okay, now let's get practical. For someone listening to this and thinking, yes, I translate in my head all the time, how do I stop? Where do they begin?
Good news. It starts small. You don't need to be fluent today, but you can start training your brain to think in English using a few simple methods. One is internal monologue. That means talking to yourself in English.
Ooh, I love this one. You're just narrating your day, right? Like, I'm brushing my teeth now, or I need to buy groceries later.
Exactly. You're practicing thinking in English without pressure. No one's listening, no judgment. And the more you do it, the more your brain gets used to forming sentences in English directly.
What if someone doesn't know the word they want to use?
That's okay. You work around it. Let's say you don't know the word for ceiling fan. Just say that thing on the ceiling that turns. Your goal isn't perfection, it's flow. And with time, you'll learn the word naturally.
That's such a freeing idea. You don't have to stop thinking, you just keep going with what you know.
Exactly. And that's where the magic happens.
We were just talking about thinking in English and not stopping when you don't know a word, just working around it. That idea, Alex, I think is really powerful because a lot of learners wait until they know every word before they speak, and they never feel ready.
Yes, that's one of the biggest myths, that you need to know every word to speak fluently. You don't. Even native speakers don't know every word in their language. We describe things, we pause, we say, "What's that word again?" It's normal. What makes you fluent is your ability to keep the conversation going.
That's so true. I forget words in English sometimes too. Everyone does. But I think language learners are afraid of sounding wrong, so they translate to avoid mistakes, but end up creating even more.
Exactly. Translating causes more mistakes than it prevents, because your native language follows different logic, grammar, and rhythm. So even if the vocabulary is correct, the sentence often feels unnatural in English.
Like if someone says he has 30 years, because that's how you say age in many other languages.
Yes, that's a classic one. In English, we say he is 30 years old. If you translate directly from, say, Portuguese or Italian, you'll say he has 30 years. Perfect translation, wrong in English.
So it's not just about words, it's about structure, logic, and rhythm, too. Thinking in English helps you build the right patterns naturally.
Exactly. When you think in English, you start absorbing those patterns from what you hear and use. You're not just learning vocabulary, you're learning how the language lives.
Let's talk about confidence for a moment. Many learners say, I know what I want to say, but I can't say it in English. Why does thinking in English help with confidence?
Because thinking in English removes hesitation. When you think in your native language and try to translate, your mind is full of doubt. Is this word right? Does this make sense? You overthink. But if you're thinking in English, you're trusting the language. You're letting it come out the way you've heard it. And even if you make a mistake, it feels more natural.
So confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from being comfortable making small mistakes while still communicating.
Yes. And the amazing thing is when you stop translating, people start understanding you better. You speak faster, with better rhythm, and your tone becomes more expressive. You sound more like a real person and less like a grammar textbook.
That's what we all want, to sound like a real person, to connect. Let's go back to the beginning for a moment. You've worked with hundreds of students around the world. What are some common signs that someone is still thinking in their native language?
Great question. Here are a few. Long pauses before speaking. The brain is translating. Literal word choices. Phrases that sound off. Unnatural sentence order, because the speaker is using their own language's structure. Low confidence during conversations. They're afraid of using the wrong words.
Slow reaction time, especially during fast conversations.
And when someone starts thinking in English?
You notice the opposite. They speak faster, they use simpler but more correct sentences. They respond more naturally in conversation. They might still make grammar mistakes, but their message is clear. Their confidence grows, and so does their vocabulary, almost automatically.
That's interesting. You said vocabulary grows automatically when people stop translating. How does that work?
Because when you think in English, you start learning words in context. For example, instead of learning that to make a decision equals tomar una decisión, you just hear make a decision used in a sentence. I made a decision to leave the job. She's having a hard time making a decision. Over time, your brain absorbs the phrase as a whole unit. You're not remembering two separate pieces of information. You're just learning English naturally like a native speaker.
So instead of building a mental dictionary, you're building a real sense of how English works.
Exactly. You're creating instinct. That's the key to fluency. Your brain begins to feel what sounds right, just like it does in your native language.
Can I ask you about dreams? It's a fun question. A lot of learners say, one day I want to dream in English. Does that actually mean anything?
It's more symbolic than scientific, but it does show something powerful. When you dream in English, it usually means your brain has started to process the language without translation. You're using it at a deep subconscious level. So yes, it's a sign that thinking in English is working.
Have your students ever told you they've had their first dream in English?
Oh yes, they get so excited. It's like a badge of honor. One student even said, "It was just me buying coffee in English, but it felt amazing."
That's adorable. I love that. Let's imagine a listener is walking right now, or maybe doing dishes while listening to this episode. What's one small thing they can do today to start thinking in English?
Narrate your life. Start small. Use the words you know. Now I'm walking to the kitchen. I need to wash these dishes. After that, I'll make tea. It's simple, but it builds fluency fast. You don't need a teacher. You just need a few minutes every day where your brain switches to English mode.
I love that. It's like having a mini conversation with yourself. No pressure, no judgment.
Yes, and the best part is you're using what you already know. You're building fluency with what's in your head. No need to open a textbook.
Okay, let's talk about resistance. You know, that little voice that says, I'm too tired, or I don't know enough words, or this is silly. How do we deal with that?
Oh yes, that voice. We all have it. Even native speakers hear it when they try to learn another language. The first step is to recognize it as normal. The brain resists change, but you're not asking it to do something impossible. You're just asking it to think in another language a few minutes a day. One tip I give my students is lower the pressure. Don't aim for perfect grammar. Don't try to sound academic. Just think simple. Think real. Talk to yourself like a friend.
That's such good advice. I remember when I learned French, I always wanted my thoughts to be perfect French, and then I gave up. But when I just let myself think, je vais au marché, or il fait beau aujourd'hui, it felt so much better.
Exactly. When your brain feels safe, it learns faster. So be kind to yourself. Reward the effort, not just the result.
Let's switch gears for a second. A lot of people learn English for different reasons: travel, work, exams, relationships. Does the motivation affect how easily someone can start thinking in English?
It can. Motivation is fuel. When someone really needs English for something important, their brain is more alert. They listen better. They remember more. But even if your goal is long-term, like living abroad someday, you can still create urgency. You just have to connect your practice to something meaningful.
Like imagining a future version of yourself speaking confidently?
Yes, visualization is powerful. One of my students used to imagine herself giving presentations in English. She would think her entire presentation in English before ever opening her mouth. That mental rehearsal helped her speak naturally when the real moment came.
That's so inspiring. And honestly, it's something anyone can do, even beginners. Just imagining yourself asking for coffee in English or meeting someone new. Alex, earlier you mentioned that grammar often gets in the way when people translate. Can we talk about that more?
Definitely. When learners think in their native language and try to translate, they carry over their grammar rules. For example, many languages don't use articles like an, or the, so learners leave them out or put them in the wrong place when they speak English.
Right. Or they use the wrong verb tense because their language doesn't have as many tenses.
Exactly. But here's the magic of thinking in English. When you stop translating, your brain starts learning grammar naturally. You hear, I am going, she is eating, they were late, and you start to feel what's right. You're not memorizing rules, you're absorbing them.
Just like children do when they learn their first language.
Yes, and that's the best way to learn grammar, through exposure, not pressure.
Let's talk about inner voice. You know, the voice inside your head. Is that something learners should train?
Absolutely. Your inner voice is where your fluency begins. If your thoughts are in your native language, your mouth will hesitate. But if your inner voice starts using English, even just for short thoughts, your speech becomes smoother.
So when I think, where did I put my phone, instead of thinking it in my native language and translating, I just think it in English.
Yes, and the more you do it, the more natural it feels. That's the goal, to make English part of your mental environment, not just something you use, but something you live in.
I love that idea, making English a mental environment, like moving your brain into a little English-speaking town.
That's such a fun image. Imagine your brain as a village. At first, only one house speaks English. But if you keep practicing, more and more houses start using English. One day the whole village speaks it, and you didn't even realize it happened.
That's perfect. And you didn't force it. You just stayed there, listened, practiced, and let it grow.
Exactly. And that's what happens when you commit to thinking in English, not once, but every day for weeks and months.
We've covered the big why it's better than translating, how it builds confidence, and how to make it a part of your day. Now, let's talk about something really important: what to do when you get stuck.
Yes, let's. Because even when you're trying to think in English, you'll hit moments where you just don't know the word, or you can't form the sentence. And your brain wants to switch back to your native language. That's normal.
I've definitely been there. And I've seen learners feel like they failed just because they switched back. But that's not true at all.
Not at all. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You're going to wobble. You might stop. You might even fall off. But that doesn't mean you're not learning. It just means your brain is adjusting to something new. So when you get stuck, here are 3 things you can do instead of translating. 1. Use simple words you know. Even if it sounds basic, it works. 2. Describe what you mean, like saying, the thing you use to open a can, instead of can opener. And 3. Leave a space and move on. Just skip the word and continue. Your brain will often fill it in later.
Those are such helpful strategies. And I think it helps to know you don't have to be perfect to be understood.
Exactly. You only need to be clear. And clear English is often simple English. So let go of trying to sound like a professor and aim to sound like a friend.
Let's zoom in on that second tip, describing what you mean. It's a skill, right?
Yes. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. Let's say you forgot the word glove. You could say, that thing you wear on your hand when it's cold. Boom. The other person will understand, and your brain will learn to keep going, not freeze.
That's great. And I think it actually teaches you creativity in English, right?
Absolutely.
It trains your brain to stay in English even when the path isn't clear. And guess what? That's real communication. Even native speakers do this. We forget words and describe them all the time.
Like, that thing, the thingy, the whatchamacallit.
Exactly. So don't be afraid of that. It's not a failure, it's a skill. We call it circumlocution, talking around a word. And it's one of the best ways to train fluency.
Now, I know some listeners might be thinking, okay, I get it, but I still don't feel comfortable. So let's talk about that emotional side. Fear, embarrassment, pressure, those feelings stop people from thinking in English too.
Yes, and they're very real. So let me say this clearly. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's part of the process. You're rewiring your brain. That takes time and effort. But the discomfort doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're growing.
Like going to the gym, the first few workouts hurt, but it's a good kind of pain. It means you're getting stronger.
Exactly. And thinking in English is a mental workout. You're building stamina. You're building new pathways in your brain. That takes repetition and patience.
So let's talk more about building that brain habit. Is there a best time to practice thinking in English?
Great question. And the answer is any time your brain is already thinking. So, when you wake up, narrate your morning. When you're walking, describe what you see. When you're angry, talk through your emotions in English. When you're bored, play with words in your mind. When you're daydreaming, imagine scenes in English. Your brain already does all these things. You're just changing the language of your inner dialogue.
And it doesn't even matter if you're speaking out loud or just silently thinking.
Exactly. Silent thinking is just as powerful. If you speak out loud too, that's a bonus. It helps your mouth get used to forming the words.
This brings us to another point, tools. Are there any tools or apps that can help people train their minds to think in English?
Yes, here are a few that can support you. 1. Voice memos. Record yourself thinking out loud for 1 minute a day. 2. Language exchange apps. Chat with people and keep it in English only. 3. Shadowing audio. Listen to a sentence and repeat it immediately. This helps internalize natural English. 4. English journaling. Write short entries in English about your day, even 3 to 4 lines. And 5. Monologue challenges. Pick a topic and talk for 60 seconds non-stop in English.
I love that idea of the monologue challenge. No pressure, just you and your voice. You don't need a teacher or class.
Exactly. And over time, you'll notice something magical. What you say becomes smoother, faster, and more natural. Your brain starts to expect to think in English.
Alex, I want to ask you about English mode. Can we train our brains to switch into English mode like flipping a switch?
Yes, and it's very effective. Think of it like changing clothes. When you put on your English mindset, your brain says, okay, we're in English now. You can use little rituals to help this. Put on English music. Open a specific notebook. Set your phone to English. Even light a candle while journaling in English. These rituals signal to your brain this is English time.
That's so creative. I used to have a tea mug with English quotes on it. Every time I used that mug, I would only read, write, or speak in English.
That's a perfect example. Create small traditions that connect your environment to the language.
So let's quickly recap what we've learned in this part of the conversation. Getting stuck is normal. When you don't know a word, describe it or skip it. Keep your English simple and clear. Don't try to sound too advanced too fast. Your inner voice is the key. Train it slowly by thinking short, easy sentences in English. You can build daily habits around thinking in English, in the car, in the shower, anywhere. Tools like journaling, voice memos, and monologues help you grow fast. Use rituals and routines to switch into English mode.
That's a great summary. And remember, thinking in English is not something only smart people can do. It's a skill anyone can build. All you need is consistency, courage, and creativity.
Thank you for saying that. I think many of our listeners will feel encouraged after hearing this. We're not aiming for perfection, we're aiming for progress. We've covered so much today about why thinking in English is more powerful than translating and how to build that habit daily. But before we close this segment, let's talk about what happens after you start thinking in English. What changes can people expect?
Great point, Emma. When you really start thinking in English consistently, the first thing you'll notice is speed. Your responses become faster. You don't have to pause and search for words as much.
Yes, it's like the words are waiting for you. They come without effort.
Exactly. And that builds confidence. You start trusting yourself more. Even if you make a mistake, you keep going. That flow, that rhythm, it starts to feel natural.
And that confidence spills into speaking, writing, even reading.
It does, because thinking is the foundation. Everything we say or write begins as a thought. So if you train your thoughts in English, you're upgrading the whole system.
Let's talk about something that a lot of learners ask. How long does it take to start thinking in English naturally?
That's such a common question. And the answer is, it depends. Everyone has a different starting point. But let's break it down. If you practice daily, even for just 15 to 30 minutes, if you focus on simple sentences and real situations, if you stay consistent for 4 to 6 weeks,
You'll start to notice a shift. You'll catch yourself thinking in English without trying.
so it doesn't take years. It can be just weeks with real focus.
Yes, and even before that, you'll notice small signs, like hearing English in your dreams or thinking, I'm hungry in English instead of your first language. These are powerful signals that your brain is adapting. What about people who are just starting out? Maybe their English is still beginner level. Is it too early for them to think in English?
Great question. And the answer is no. It's never too early to start. Even at the most basic level, you can start. Here's how. Learn 10 to 20 core words like eat, go, want, like, need. Use those to form tiny thoughts. I want tea. I am tired. He is nice. Think these thoughts every day, while walking, cooking, showering.
Even if you only know 50 words, you can use them to form hundreds of thoughts.
That's amazing. It really removes the pressure of needing to be advanced before starting.
Exactly. In fact, thinking in English from the beginning helps you grow faster. You start learning in the language, not just about the language. Now let's get a little personal, Alex. Have you ever learned a language where you had to train yourself to think in it?
Yes, I learned Spanish and later a bit of Japanese. In both cases, I had the same problem most learners have with English. I kept translating in my head, and I was slow and nervous. But then I started doing everything we're talking about here, describing my day, talking to myself, narrating my thoughts in the new language. It was uncomfortable at first, but over time, I found myself thinking, ¿Dónde está mi teléfono? Instead of where is my phone? That shift changed everything.
So you've walked this path too. You know what it feels like.
Absolutely. That's why I believe in it so strongly. Thinking in the target language is the shortest path to fluency. It doesn't matter if the language is English, Spanish, Japanese, it works the same way.
We've talked a lot about how to start and what to do, but let's now give our listeners a 7-day challenge, something they can actually do to begin building the habit of thinking in English. What do you suggest?
Love this idea. Okay, here's a 7-day Think in English challenge.
Day 1. Think about your morning routine in English. While brushing teeth, eating, getting dressed, use simple sentences. I am brushing my teeth. I need to hurry. That man is running. Day 2. Narrate your surroundings during a walk or commute. The car is red. The road is wet. That man is running. Day 3. Describe your lunch or dinner. This rice is hot. This soup smells good. I like spicy food. Day 4. Talk to yourself before going to bed. Reflect on the day. Today was long. I finished my work. I felt happy in the afternoon. Day 5. Set a timer for 2 minutes. Think or speak nonstop in English about your favorite movie, food, or place. Don't stop, even if it's not perfect. Day 6. Try to avoid your native language for 30 minutes. Set a mental block. Only use English in your thoughts, even for small things. Day 7. Record a 1-minute voice memo in English describing your day. Listen to it. Notice your progress. That is fantastic. It's simple, practical, and powerful. Anyone listening right now can start this today. No excuses.
Exactly. It doesn't require a class, just your mind, your time, and your effort.
All right, before we close episode, I want to ask you one final question. What's the one message you want every English learner to take away from this episode?
Here it is. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start thinking in English now, today. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't wait until you feel ready. Every moment you spend in English is a step towards fluency. The more you think in it, the more natural it becomes. English shouldn't be something you translate. It should be something you live in.
That's so powerful. Thank you, Alex, for kicking off this series with such insight and energy. We're just getting started, and I know the next segments will build on everything we've discussed today.
Thanks, Emma. I'm excited to keep going. To everyone listening, just remember your thoughts shape your language. So start shaping your thoughts in English.
All right, that wraps up episode Think in English, Stop Translating from Your Language. In our next segment, we'll dive into specific mental exercises to train your brain to think faster, clearer, and more naturally in English. Stay tuned, and remember, you can do this.